Get started. All right. Thanks for joining How to Bounce Back. My name is Jamie Lee. I'm a leadership and negotiation coach. And today we're going to talk about 4 simple steps you can take to bounce back, even in the crisis, even when things go wrong, even when you hear no, even when you encounter setbacks in your personal and professional life. I really do believe that bouncing back is a task of leadership. And I'm curious to know, like I have some thoughts on what it means to lead, but I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. Like, what does it mean for you to lead, to be a leader? So if you wanna type in your thoughts about what it means to lead, I'd love to see it. You could put it into the chat box. That'd be great. Or if you want to hear my thoughts on leadership, I will share them with you too in just a few seconds. All right. So there are, of course, different types of definition, different thoughts about what it means to lead. And this was one of the definitions that I encountered last year that I absolutely loved. I love this definition of lead, meaning going first without knowing the how. And I think it's so relevant right now in the times that we're in with COVID-19, Black Lives Matter, civil unrest, recession and all that. Like, we don't know how we're going to navigate our way through and beyond it yet, but just going anyways and figuring it out along the way, I believe is the call of leadership and is what we do when we do bounce back, right? And so when you are leading, when you are showing up as a leader, what do you do? And I think there are just 3 basic things that you do when you are leading with resilience or leading in general, right? First, you make decisions. You got to decide which direction you want to go. And you create solutions in the best interest of yourself, best interest of your team, best interest of your family, right? You have to come up with new ways to solve problems. And also, you gotta be willing to fail. I mean, think about, are there any leaders? Is there anyone in the world who is leading, whether that's a small team or in the public sphere, a global leader, a political leader, any sort of leader who's out in the arena? Like, is there anyone who doesn't get criticized, whose actions and decisions for some people get to be called out as failures? And there isn't. Everyone who leads publicly, right? Some people will say, well, that didn't go well, you failed. And some people will say, well, that was great, you prevailed, right? And sometimes you take leadership and it doesn't work out immediately, but it takes that willingness to try, willingness to show up, willingness to take the risks that really defines leadership. Okay, so I think this is really relevant to our times, to what we're talking about, because when we are struggling, as many of us are in these times, like, this feels so hard. This morning, I had a conversation with a psychotherapist who works for a large financial company here in New York. And she said that in March, people got afraid of the silent killer, COVID-19. And then in April, people started, feeling fatigue, like compassion fatigue, mental and emotional fatigue, reading about everything that's going around and that's happening and around the world, right? And then in June, she said, people got upended by the death of George Floyd, and now people are panicking and feeling confusion, anxiety, anger, grief, right? And she said, I mean, it's totally understandable why people wake up in the morning feeling anxious, angry, scared, right? But she said there are simple strategies people can implement. And of course, I'm going to tell you all about that. But until we take back control emotionally, right, mentally, and decide to take the lead in these situations, whether that's, leading yourself in your home office or leading your team remotely, right? Until we do, we sort of are stuck in this mind spin, and we're stuck in actions that don't really serve us in the long run. And here's what I mean by that. So here are some of the actions that I've seen my own clients, I've seen people who are not bouncing back, right? Who are not able to just bounce back and take the lead. Here are some of the things that those people do. And you let me know if this resonates with you too. I'm just going to take a sip of water. Okay. So when we're not bouncing back, when we're not taking the lead in these crises for ourselves, sometimes we just end up overworking, especially those of us who are smart, ambitious people who love to work. We end up just doing more and more of it. I've had clients tell me that they started taking calls at 7:30 a.m. just because, they could just roll out of the bed, still wearing the pajamas and jump on a call. They're like, well, I could do it, so why not? And then they also find themselves working really late into the night, like 10, 11, midnight, right? And they're overworking. Or when they're worrying, they also overconsume information, social media feed, news media, right? And of course, when you're overconsuming media this way, you just end up feeling more stressed out because your mind is bombarded by all the things that are going wrong or could go wrong, which is what the news often is all about, right? Or you overconsume food, you overconsume alcohol, you overconsume just other people's information and feel like you're in this analysis paralysis, not really being able to take a firm stand, make a decision for yourself to move forward wherever you are, in your situation. I've done this myself, right? It's so easy to get sucked into the social media feed. It's so easy to overconsume information, especially if you tend to be analytical and you like data, right? Or you just think, I just gotta wait it out. I just gotta wait this out, sit on my hands, see what happens before I make decisions for myself. And I've written about this. I really do honestly believe that, yes, some things we are gonna have to wait and see, right? We will have to wait and see if the coronavirus infection rates go down all around the country, and we will have to wait and see when we can go back dining out in the world. Like some things, yeah, absolutely, we do have to wait and see. But there are certain other things, specifically making decisions for yourself, right? Where you don't necessarily have to wait. You can decide. And one of the things that I think is really important right now is to not be in this like wait and hold pattern when it comes to showing up for yourself in your career, like being committed to adding value and articulating the value of your contributions, right? Let's not wait on that, because people, yes, some people are furloughed, some people have been laid off, some people are, taking pay cuts, but, for the most part, most of us are still working. And when we're working, we're adding value. When we're adding value, right, you want to articulate it so people can see it, and gain even more value from knowing that this work is being done. Let's not like wait and see about what you want your career to look like in the future. And I'll talk more about that. But of course, right now there's a lot of worry in the world. People are worrying about going back to the office. What's that going to be like? People are worrying about, in America, there are infection rates going up in other parts of the country. I'm in New York City, but in other parts of the country. And so people are worrying. And when people worry, the easiest thing to do is blame. And we love to blame other people, but also what I see often with my own clients, people who are ambitious, people who are driven, people who are really conscientious, who don't like office politics. We tend to sometimes blame ourselves. We blame ourselves for overworking. We blame ourselves for overconsuming. We blame ourselves for waiting. We blame ourselves for worrying. We blame ourselves for feeling bad. And yeah, this is really easy to do, but also it's so toxic to our own selves, right? To be blaming ourselves when we are dealing, or when we're coping with the crises in the world, by doing what really comes naturally and by default to so many people. So I just want to offer, if you do see yourself overworking, overconsuming, waiting, worrying, like, let's not blame ourselves. It's not helpful for you to blame yourself or other people, because when you do that, what ends up happening is you feel worse. You feel exhausted. You feel like things are not in your control. You feel like, you can't manage, you can't cope, you're powerless and stuck. And when you're feeling that way, it's really hard. It's really hard to bounce back, right? Really hard to take the lead in any situation that you're given. So I want to offer, if you do see yourself doing this, let's not blame ourselves. It is, it comes very naturally, it comes by default to so many people, and it's okay, right? But why is it that we struggle to bounce back when things are hard? Why is it that when circumstances, that we define as challenging happen, like COVID-19 and everything else that's happening, like we feel like, oh, I can't cope, right? And I want to offer, there is a distinction, a simple distinction, okay? A lot of people see themselves as brittle, like emotionally brittle. Like they say things like, I can't take it anymore. If I have to deal with another week of this, another month of this, I'm just gonna break. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna lose it, right? And I'll be totally honest with you. I know here in New York, it's like day 110 or something of the quarantine. And I have also had the thought, I'm like, wow, we have to do this for another quarter? I mean, how much longer is this gonna go on? I don't know how much more of this can I take? And I caught myself thinking that thought. And when I thought that, I'm like, oh, I'm like this brittle eggshell. Like, how much more of this can I take? I might break. I might not be able to take it any longer, right? Or you can see yourself as resilient. Now, what was really fascinating about thinking about resilience in this way was, I was thinking about that rubber ball. That rubber ball, you hit the rubber ball, it hits the wall, and then it bounces right back. You throw it hard, and it takes that momentum, and it moves with it. And it never loses the integrity of its shape, that roundedness, right? It might, kind of get squishy when it hits the surface, but it takes that impact, and it lets it pass through its shape so that it never loses, it never breaks, it never loses its shape, right? And I think that's such a beautiful analogy, a beautiful metaphor for resilience in these times. Like, how might we be able to take on the challenges, even if they're just emotional and mental, during these times, and bounce with it, and so that we gain momentum, so that the challenge, let's say the challenge that we're facing is like the act of being thrown against the wall. Like, we feel like we're being thrown against the wall, and instead of breaking like this egg, we just bounce right back, and we just move forward, right? We never lose that momentum. We are able to use that throw, if you will, to ride the momentum, right? And so I was thinking about like, why is it that some people, and sometimes, like I also had the thought that I couldn't take it anymore, right? Why is it that sometimes we feel brittle, and sometimes there are people who see themselves as resilient, like they're like, bring it on, I can take this on. And the difference between these two mindsets, right, brittle or resilient, is seeing your capacity to bounce back as a limited resource. Like there's only so much that you can handle. Like there's scarcity, right? If I have to take another pay cut, or I have to take another setback in my journey, like I might just lose it, right? So you're seeing your ability to bounce back as limited. Whereas when you're like this rubber ball and you just bounce right back and you ride the momentum, like your capacity to be resilient is unlimited, right? And so I want to bring you to this quote. It's from the book called The Soul of Money. And the reason why I thought of this quote is because when I thought about like the difference between brittle and resilient, it's like how so many of us think about money as a limited, as a scarce resource. I did negotiation training last year, and I asked the audience, you know, what is your predominant thought about money? And most of the people who attended that training said that they feel like money is limited in their life. There's not enough money in their life, right? And see how that is correlated. It's similar to how we see our capacity to deal with setbacks as a limited resource. There's only so much money in the world, and I feel like there's only so much of this I can take, right? And so Lynn Twist wrote this book called The Soul of Money, highly recommended. And in this book, she talks about the distinction between scarcity and sufficiency. And Lynn Twist is a fascinating person. She works as a fundraiser for the World Hunger Project. And she has worked with extremely, extremely poor people, like people who, you know, make less than I don't know. I was just gonna make up a figure, but I'm not gonna do that. She has worked with very cash poor people in third world countries, in India, in Africa, and she has worked with billionaires who have so much money, and they have so much money that like they don't know what to do with it, or they feel stressed out about it. It's really fascinating, right? Because you think you have more money, it's going to help you be happier, but in fact, what she found was not necessarily true. People who have a lot of money are not necessarily happier. But in any case, in this book, she talks about the distinction between scarcity and sufficiency. Scarcity is the myth that we've all been taught in our society from our childhood, from socialization, that there is not enough money, not enough resilience, not enough to go around. And that's just the way it is. That's just the way I am, right? Like you might, or some people I have heard say things like, I just can't take it anymore. I can't take any more of this, right? So it's like they see it as just the way it is. Not enough money, not enough resilience. But she says, scarcity ultimately is a lie. It's a lie that we've all bought into, because the truth is sufficiency. Like we always have enough. And in this quote, she says, sufficiency is a context that we create within ourselves that reminds us that if we look around and within ourselves, we will find what we need. There is always enough. What would it be like for you to think about your capacity to bounce back as always enough? And sometimes, you know, you hear that, you're like, well, that's nice, but how do you, I don't know, how do I apply that? And I want to challenge you to think about the time in your life where you really felt like you were at the breaking point. You're like about to crack like this egg, right? And then somehow you bounced back. You didn't think you could, but you did. Like I think about the time 15 years ago, when I first moved to New York City, I had literally $2,000 in my checking account. I had no job. I had just secured an apartment share in Queens. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to figure it out. I trusted that I had the capacity, that was sufficient, that my willingness to try, that my desire to figure it out and make it work was sufficient, that I was sufficient, that I could figure it out. And I did. I did find a job eventually. So yeah, there was enough. I found enough. First, I had to look within myself and find the inner resources and the creativity and the desire to, apply to jobs, to go to interviews and, prepare for them. Yeah. So I want to challenge you to think about that. Okay. So, all right. So let's move on. So how do you become resilient? Now, I wrote in the email today, I don't know if you saw it, I mentioned about the conversation, the quick chat I had with a psychotherapist today. And that was about a different event. It wasn't about this. And I will definitely let you know all about it if you follow me on the newsletter. Some really exciting discussions coming ahead in July. But in any case, she told me about this simple framework that the Army uses to prepare their soldiers for combat. And that applying this framework, according to the research and the studies that the Army did, helped them bounce back, be more resilient, and be hardy, so that they were less likely to have PTSD when they went into combat. And I was like, I listened to that, I'm like, wow, that is so fascinating. And when she described the 3 C's of it, I'm like, oh wow, that's what I teach my clients. Right? And the first C, okay, was control. Okay, and the C that I teach my clients is that circumstances are not necessarily thoughts. And circumstances are basically things that happen outside in the world that we cannot control, but our thinking about them, we can control, right? So the Army teaches their soldiers to focus on what they can control, not what they cannot. And so what they can control is how they think about the situation. And this is so important because how you think about the situation creates your emotions, your feelings, and how you feel drives your actions. And when you take action, that is what creates your results, right? So thoughts are what is in your control. So, and I love this, absolutely love it, right? And anyone can apply this. And when you get this, this is going to be a game changer for you. I know, like, I'm kind of explaining the concept, and you're like, huh? Circumstances versus thoughts? What do you mean? But hold on one second. So in my coaching practice, I help smart, ambitious women who love what they do but hate office politics get promoted and better paid. And I had one client who, with my help, she negotiated her job offer and then she got promoted, okay? And that was all awesome and great. And then something happened that impacted her confidence. What had happened was that when she got promoted, her colleague, somebody who, according to her, also wanted that promotion, wrote her an email. And in this email, the colleague said, well, I was also involved in the project that you got recognition for, right? Those were the words that she said. And my client had the thought that she was being attacked, that she was being accused. Okay, so we have a conversation about, okay, what are the circumstances? What exactly happened? What were the words they said? And what, you know, how can you describe the circumstance in a way that everyone would agree, right? Because sometimes we describe circumstance and it's not objective, it's subjective, right? For her, her immediate thought about the event was that she received an accusatory email, right? And she felt like that was just the circumstance. That's what had happened. But then I had to slow her down to separate just the facts, just the neutral, provable, factual things about the email, and then separate her thoughts from it, right? Her thought was that I'm being attacked, I'm being accused. And of course, when she thought I'm being accused, she felt bad. She felt guilty or insecure. And from that place, she wanted to shut down and she wanted to diminish her accomplishments. And she wanted to avoid the person who had written that email to her. And as a result, like, you know, in her mind, she had become the accused, like sort of victim in the situation, right? So I helped her see, listen, you can think that. You're all your thoughts and your opinions, you're totally entitled to them. But just notice the impact that your thinking has on how you feel, how you show up, you know, in the conversation, in subsequent conversations with this particular person. And is the result of that serving you? Like, do you want to be the accused? Do you want to show up like you had done something wrong? Do you want to just keep diminishing and playing small, right? And she's like, no, not really. Okay, so will you have control over that? Yeah. And so the thing that I teach my clients is that it is possible for us to be with a pure circumstance. And pure circumstance, okay, basically means, you know, like how when we are in a situation like the ones that we're in now with COVID and the civil unrest, like we have lots of thoughts about them, right? But what if we can just be where we are in this moment with no thoughts? Just purely in the circumstance of right now. And so if you are joining me live, or if you're watching the replay, like I want to invite you to like take a moment to just take a deep breath. And then if you're sitting, right, feel your bum on your seat, feel your feet on the ground, and feel what it is like to just be in your body right now, right? Without getting drifted away, right? But if you just take a deep breath in, and this is something I learned in psychology, in the field of psychology, they call it orienting, like orienting to the now. This is something that the psychotherapist also mentioned, like you want to orient to right now. Take a deep breath in, and for me, I feel, you know, I can feel the pressure of the headset against my head and ears. I can feel the texture of my dress on my body. I can feel a bit of back tension from sitting kind of awkwardly. Like that's what I feel in my body this moment. So whether you are in a situation at work or whether you're just dealing with the current circumstances, I want to invite you just take a few moments, a few times a day to just get into pure circumstances in like the pure circumstance of now, right now, in this moment. And when I did the orienting exercise, I was guided through it once, and the practitioner had me just notice what I'm seeing, notice the breath in my body, right? Notice the sensation in my body, on my body, right? Notice what I'm seeing. And then just be with that, right? Without rushing into the thoughts, okay? And I know this is really difficult. Sometimes guided meditation helps, breath work helps. And another thing that I have found really helpful in terms of getting into just the right now, this moment of the circumstance, is describing the circumstance of right now using first generation words. This is something that I did with a client who, before the COVID outbreak, she took a new job with a different financial firm. And when she did, I mean, she negotiated and she was happy to be there, but at the same time, there was a lot of anxiety about the unknowns, anxiety about working with new people, dealing with new culture. And so I walked her through and I said, what if you just focused on the things in front of you right now, right? Table, computer, flowers, window, right now. These are all factual. Remember, circumstance, as I define it, factual, neutral, provable. But when I just focus on ground, chair, water, phone, yeah, it helps me feel grounded and be in this moment without rushing into thoughts about what did I do wrong yesterday? What do I have to do, an hour from now? What do I have to do tomorrow, next week? And this, right? It's like projecting the past into the future, or I was told this can be described as survival rumination, where you're just like ruminating about, oh, what do I need to do to stay alive? And then before you know it, you're like in this either fight, flight, or freeze mode. You're like, like this, right? This happens when you go into your thoughts. But if you can just ground yourself into the right now, using first generation words, or just going into pure circumstance. What is it like to be in this body, to be in this situation, in this room, in this place? Okay. All right. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to type it into the chat box. Okay, let's move forward. All right. And in terms of bouncing back from difficult emotions that we're all experiencing, there's nothing better than taking a moment to put your hand on your heart and to connect and to feel the emotion that is coming up. And I want to say this is something that I've never been taught how to do until I went to coach training. All throughout my life, I was told that I shouldn't feel bad. All throughout my life, I was told that I should be happy, I should be focused, I should be productive, but I shouldn't feel sad, I shouldn't be mad. Or, if I did get mad, then, I was socialized to think that other people will find it a threat or think of me as an aggressive bitch, especially at work. And so that's not good. And my mother just always wanted me to be happy, like all the time. And so I thought I should be happy all of the time. And if you think you should be happy all of the time, and you're in the current crises as we are, I mean, of course you just feel wretched, because not only are you not happy, but you're kind of shaming and blaming yourself for not being happy all of the time. And also, with the racial tensions in America, like there's a lot of emotion coming up. And I'm just going to be like really honest with you. The last couple of weeks, I had to just take some time, clear out my schedule, take some time to just process, to be with, and to allow emotions that were coming up for me, because I'm an immigrant. I have experienced racial discrimination, but also like I totally get white guilt because I've also internalized bias from being raised in the society. So long story short, this is the thing that holds so many of us back from bouncing back, not knowing the how, and not knowing that it is okay to just be with emotions, no matter how difficult, no matter how ugly or negative they are. I mean, in this crisis, I have felt guilt. I have felt a tremendous amount of grief. I have felt shame. I have felt inadequacy. And what has helped me bounce back every time, I get kind of chills just thinking about it, is allowing myself to be with those emotions. And when I allow those emotions to pass through my body, I was able to feel better the next day. And I would wake up and I would like, oh, I feel lighter. I can produce, I can write newsletters, I can coach my clients, I can give webinars, right? And here's why, because emotions are not dangerous. Emotions are not something that only women do. This is a stereotype against women. Emotions are not, bad. Emotions are not a problem. Emotions are simply a vibration in the body. And sometimes the emotion is triggered by a conscious thought. Like when you think, oh, I've been accused by my colleague, of course you feel terrible. But sometimes we have these unconscious thoughts, and this is the work I help my clients to uncover those unconscious thoughts that's creating a particular vibration that's difficult to cope with. And the reason why I think this is so important, and I really want to stress the point, is because in negotiation, oops, okay, let me just secure my computer. In negotiation, researchers, MIT researchers, have found that the most important factor that decides somebody's success is how they feel. How they feel about themselves, how they feel about the counterpart, how they feel about the process, how they feel about the potential outcome. So like, what are you thinking, either consciously or unconsciously, that is creating emotions in the negotiation process, right? And when you raise your awareness around your thoughts, both conscious, unconscious, so making the unconscious conscious, right? And raising your awareness around the emotion in your body, you have authority over it. And when you have authority over it, you're not overcome by the feeling of inadequacy or, feeling insecure or not ready or like pushy or needy or just like panicked, right? You can allow that emotion to be in the body, but still let the higher functioning part of you, the prefrontal cortex, right, the evolved human brain, to make decisions and proceed. Like it's possible for you to be with the emotion and not succumb to it, even in a negotiation conversation, right? And also during these times, like it's applicable to all sorts of difficult situations. So here's what you do. Putting your hand on your heart is, first of all, an act of compassion, because of course you have negative emotions. You're just human. Of course you experience shame, guilt, inadequacy, fear, all of the emotions that are coming to the surface, not just for me, but for so many people around the world during these times. And we can just have some compassion for ourselves. We can name it. And we can also locate that vibration in the body, and we can breathe into it. I have found this exercise to be transformative. Just a few months ago, I thought my father was missing in action. His phone died, and I couldn't reach him. He has multiple organ issues. And so I couldn't reach him. It's coronavirus, we're quarantined, I can't travel. And I'm like, oh. And the emotions came up. And what really helped me was getting coached and allowing, like what you do in a coaching session is the coach holds the space. In other words, the coach allows you, like gives you the attention and the focus and the safe space for you to name the emotion, name, the thought that's creating the emotion. Also, what is it that you're feeling? Locate it in your body, breathe into it. And so I was feeling grief, and I located it in my body. I felt it in my throat and my chest. I breathed into it. Yeah, I cried a lot. And that's okay. But allowing myself to process that emotion like that allowed me to feel like I was strong enough to persevere. And of course, just a little bit later, my relative went to his house and he was there. He just didn't know his phone was dead. Okay. All right. Anyways, I want to offer you, when you do that process, when you allow that emotion to pass through your body and be with it, then you can move on to aspiration or appreciation. Okay. And I think this is a critical step in being able to bounce back, right? Which direction do you want to bounce to? You decide. Let's start with appreciation, okay? I did this myself just the other week, where I processed some feelings of grief, again, with everything that's happening around the world and the headlines and racial injustice. And I just felt a tremendous amount of grief. And when I allowed that grief to pass through my body, I got to a calmer state. And then I said, where do I want to take my brain's direction? And I said, I want to be in appreciation, because when I'm in appreciation, when I'm in gratitude, I become more open, joyous, creative, resilient. So I just made a list. I made a list of all the things that I'm appreciative of. And I want to offer, this is a practice that I've been doing for years. Right? Whenever I feel really down, whenever I feel like I'm brittle, I'm at breaking point, I sit my ass down and I just make myself write all of the things that I'm appreciative for, I'm grateful for. And I start with the pen that I'm holding. I'm grateful for this pen. I'm grateful for this paper. I'm grateful for the clothes I'm wearing, grateful for the food in my belly, right? And so that focuses your brain, again, to the now. Remember, the psychotherapist said, the first thing you want to do is you want to orient your brain to the now. And so making a list of appreciation orients me to the now. But also, I have ambitions, and so do you, right? So ambition or aspiration is a place that we can take our brains to when we want to bounce back. And when you think about your aspirations, it's possible for you to think intentionally about your past self, current self, and future self. Like, I want you to think about, like, these are all three different people. Like, who you were, who you are now, and who you're becoming, right? And sometimes the fastest way to tap into our aspirations and think about what we can do, who we can become, is think about what have we done in the past? What accomplishments have we created in the past that we're really proud of? When was that time when you thought, like, I'm not going to be able to bounce back from this, and yet you did? Or something happened and you had an idea and you persevered. So make a list of all those past accomplishments that you're proud of. And then ask yourself, what kind of person does that? Somebody who's resilient, somebody who's resourceful, creative. I did this fun exercise with a client of mine, and I encourage you to test it out for yourself. Sometimes when we think about our careers, it's so easy to think, oh, it happened because of so-and-so. Like, because so-and-so saw my resume and called me that one day, that's how I got that job. It was like, it wasn't really me. It was like that person who tapped me on the shoulder. Like, so many women say this. So many women say, oh, it just fell into my lap, right? As if they had no agency, as if it wasn't really them making the decision and driving their career forward. It was just like somebody just pulled them into it. Yeah. So let yourself go there. Let yourself go there and think about, okay, whose fault is it? Whose fault is it that I got this job? Whose fault is it that I got promoted? Whose fault is it that I'm working in this industry? And then, like, make yourself write that list. it's somebody's fault, okay? And then once you've written that list where it's somebody else's fault, and then you revisit all of the same things and you think about, okay, how is it that I created those results? How is it that I created that job, promotion, salary, right? Unless you were available, unless you had worked on the capacity to do those jobs, you wouldn't have been tapped on the shoulder. So you get to take credit for working on your Excel skills, business development skills, analysis skills, right? So see how your current self has created the results that you have in your career now. And then from there, once we have explored the accomplishments of your past self and the capacity of your current self, then we think about, okay, where is my future self? The other thing that the Army teaches their soldiers to do so that they become hardy and resilient to PTSD is that they focus the soldiers to challenge things on things they can control. And so what can your current self control to set your future self up for success? And make that a personal challenge to you. Give yourself a goal, even if it's a really small goal, like climbing the stairs every day, once a day, or doing yoga once a day, or setting up one virtual coffee chat once a week with somebody in your network, right? Give yourself something to focus on so that your future self can have those accomplishments. That future self can be like, I did that, even through these crises. Even through, working from home and kids climbing onto my lap in the middle of a Zoom meeting, right? Okay. All right. So finally, the last thing that you want to do is you want to bring your, Catherine says progress over perfection. Absolutely. Progress over perfection. Love that. Okay. So then you bring your focus back to your current self and think about, okay, what are my obstacles to achieving my goals? What's in the way? And then you want to think about your obstacles from the perspective of your future self who's already achieved the goal. And think about, okay, if my future self's already done it, how did my future self overcome this obstacle? And how did she turn this obstacle into a strategy for growth? And also you want to constrain your focus to things that you can control. And then make some decisions, implement those decisions, and then evaluate those decisions, right? So you can make better decisions in the future. So let me give you a very specific example. I had a client who was working on her salary negotiation. Yes, people are negotiating their salaries even now. If they're getting job offers, that means that offer is negotiable for the most part, usually, okay? And she wanted to negotiate her salary, and she felt like the obstacle was that she felt like her manager was somebody that she went and complained to. Like it was obstacle, it was a perceived obstacle, right? And so then I asked her, okay, so 3 to 5 years from now, are you still working as an employee? And she's like, no, I'd be running my own consulting agency. Okay, so your future self is a CEO, right? She's like, yeah, my future self is a CEO. She runs her own business. I'm like, okay, from the perspective of your future self, okay, how would you think about this obstacle? She'd be like, oh, actually, if I were seeing myself as a CEO, I would see this as an opportunity to pitch this person, the manager, on the value of my services. Like, love it, just do it, okay? So another way to think about this is whatever your current obstacles are, think about if your self-concept was so big, audacious, preposterous, yeah? I just got some coaching myself, and the coach told me, what if you really thought you were going to change the industry. You were going to help change the career trajectories of all the women in the world. Like, think about that. You can do that. I'm like, yes, I can do that. Yes. And then how would you think about the obstacle? Like, the obstacle would be, you know, something that I work with, I deal with. I would create strategies around it, right? So whatever obstacles you're facing now, what if that was the way? What if, you know, embracing the obstacle as a way to grow your capacity to bounce back? Let me give you another example. A couple of weeks ago, I woke up and I just had so much back pain. I'm like, this is an obstacle because it's painful for me to sit down in my coaching sessions. So what did I do? I am like, okay, what if, you know, I can just create some strategies. I can set my standing desk up and I can do my coaching sessions standing, right? And so then the strategy helped me be more alert, more present in my coaching sessions because I had to stand on my own 2 feet, just as I am now, right? Okay, so to summarize, when you put this together, it spells chaos. And I like that because so many of us are resistant to being resilient when we are afraid that, you know, confronting the emotions, you know, coming up with strategies that we'd have to, what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is it feels like chaos, right? It feels like ass. And it's okay. Growth feels like chaos. Remember, it's going first without knowing the how. So when you're trying to figure it out, of course you feel like you're fumbling in the dark. But what if that's not a problem? What if you're struggling, it's not a sign that you're weak. It's a sign that you're trying. It's a sign that you're showing up to lead. Yeah? All right. So circumstances are not your thoughts. So when you can identify the pure circumstance, try to be present in the now, or you try to articulate the circumstances in very simple first generation language. Yeah, help you be grounded in the now. Orient yourself into the now. Hand on your heart. Be compassionate with yourself. It's okay to feel all the emotions that are coming up. Emotions are not dangerous. You can allow them. And when you allow them, it makes you more resilient. It makes you able to bounce back. Aspiration, appreciation. Again, this is another strategy for redirect the brain to the now. Orient yourself to the now and then to the future, to challenges that you can control, to setting goals for the future, for yourself, for your growth. And then identifying those obstacles and then using your own brain to come up with solutions, right? Coming up with solutions, creating them, implementing them is the practice of leadership. So if you found this helpful, if you enjoyed this content, I want to invite you to a free 60-minute consultation, one-on-one consultation with me. It's a value-packed hour where I help you individually uncover your blind spots or wherever you are struggling with, right? And I help you identify what is your custom strategy to go from where you are now to where you want to go. It is possible for you to bounce back from here to becoming a better leader, a braver person, somebody who is more fulfilled in your career. So if you would like to reach out, this is my email address. You can go to you can email me directly and I will just respond and set up our hour-long chat with you. Or you can come to my website, go to jamieleecoach.com/apply. I hope you found this helpful. and know that it is possible for you to really bounce back in a way that you're proud of. When you look back on 2020, right, in the future, you can look back on it and be like, wow, during this time, I really grew my capacity to lead myself. And because I was able to lead myself during this time, I can lead others into their greatness. Yeah. And these are very simple strategies that you can implement right away. So if you have any questions, oh, you're most welcome. Catherine says this was a much needed attitude reset. You're most welcome. Does anyone have any questions? I guess not. All right. Again, I have I have 3 spots open for next week for 60-minute consultations where I give you my undivided attention. I give you my full attention, and I help you identify how you can bridge the gap from where you are now to where you want to go. And I specialize in working with smart, ambitious women who love what they do. They genuinely love it. They tend to be mid-career women, and they have found that they're either under-earning, or they feel underappreciated, or they're just struggling. They're just struggling with the circumstances. They're struggling with feelings of anxiety, or they're struggling with difficult people, difficult bosses. And I help them create the mindset, right? Remember, thoughts are in your control. You can manage your own mind. And when you can manage your own mind, you can manage your emotions, you can manage your action strategy, and you can create the result that you want. And I take my clients through a 6-month one-on-one coaching program where I give them my support once a week. They have my full attention, and I hold space for them so that they can process their emotions, brainstorm strategies, right? Sometimes I help them role play and come up with the language that they want to use to articulate and to advocate for their future potential, or to set boundaries, right? You got to be able to set boundaries so that you're not working 20 hours a day right now, because it is important for your resilience, for your ability to bounce back, to take good care of yourself, to get a good night's sleep, and to be eating well, right? And so sometimes those take some gutsy conversations. I have clients right now who are working on exactly that. They're working on working less. And by the way, they're amazing women. So of course, they're still delivering value. They're getting their work done, but they're also creating that boundary of time and energy so that they can take care of themselves really well. And that was one of the other things that the psychotherapist mentioned, is that you want to be able to give yourself support emotionally, physically, socially, right? So sometimes you just got to set boundaries, be able to say no, be able to push back in a respectful way, right? So all of the strategies that I help my clients implement are focused on win-win outcomes, so that it's not about like, you're doing it wrong and I'm doing it right and I'm going to take this and you get less. It's never about that kind of like, I don't know. I don't know what to call it, but we never work on those strategies because it doesn't help you. It doesn't help you in the long run. It doesn't help you in the short term, right? We want to be able to build relationship as we're working towards the result that we want. And it's totally possible. It's 100% possible. Like, I have one client right now who is managing her own mind around a particular boss that she's working with, who, in her mind, she feels the boss is very dominating. But when she managed her own mind about, the value of her work and what she's capable of and what she's capable of achieving in the world, like she's like, oh yeah, the boss, he's not really a problem. I can say no. I can take praise. I can get promoted. Yes, and she's hitting it out of the park right now. So I think right now is the best time to invest in coaching, because coaching is about managing your own brain so that you grow your capacity to lead, to bounce back, to be resilient. And this is the best time because we have all this time, at home. Well, maybe some of you have to work less or watch a little less Netflix, but you have time. You have the capacity to focus on your mind, right? And when you invest in managing your brain, like that is the skill, that is the meta skill that enables you to do so many other things, right? Because when you're able to manage your own brain through these times, you're going to be able to manage your brain when you are managing a team of people, when you are showing up and asking for the resources, the promotion or the salary increase that you want, right? This is a great opportunity for you to build capacity to do even greater things in the future. And I know some of us are taking pay cuts, some of us are furloughed, but what if this is the perfect time to invest in the management of your own mind so that you can come out of this strong? So that when things start picking up, and they will just in a matter of few weeks, months, probably some months, right? The best time to invest is actually when, it's kind of like, what do they say? It's buy low, sell high, right? And sometimes the best ideas, the best solutions, the best opportunities come in a recession. And what if that's you? What if that's you? Yeah. So that you invest in yourself, you invest in your mind management, you invest in your emotional mastery so that you can come out of this strong. So that, and they will pick up real soon, you can close that wage gap and the leadership gap in the workplace. All right. So this is the work that I am doing with my clients. I believe, from the bottom of my heart that women are the greatest untapped resource, and we are the secret economic power when we earn more money, when we make more money, when we articulate the value of our work, advocate, negotiate, right? There is just more good in the world. So if you want to find out how this work can apply to you, email me. Let's have a chat. And if you have any other questions, again, feel free to email me. And I will talk to you soon. I will see you in your inbox or over Zoom. And I wish you a great day. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.